Court. A remarkable piece over at Alternet by Alex Henderson. It's titled, Shaken Law Professors Revolt as Hyperpartisan SCOTUS Rulings Upend Constitutional Principles. Elena Kagan recently gave a speech where she talked about how the Supreme Court has ceased to be a court, essentially, and has become an arm of the GOP, of the Republican Party, ideologically. It's become a political arm. And, for generations, the Supreme Court's main job was to uphold civil liberties. I mean, or at least that's what they did. That's what they perceived as their main job. But then, they struck down abortion rights, one of the civil liberties afforded largely to women. And then Clarence Thomas, Ginny's husband, right-wing conspiracy nut crackpot, in his ruling on Dobbs, said, we really ought to consider Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell. Griswold, of course, is Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell, basically. Griswold said it's legal for you to have birth control. This was 1965, Griswold versus Connecticut. And in that case, a Connecticut couple, a married couple, sued at the Supreme Court to overturn a Virginia law that said that it was a felony for anybody in Virginia to have birth control, including condoms. See, this is where the GOP is going, is these extreme Catholic laws. And, Griswold overturned that. And then in 1972, the Supreme Court legalized condoms for single people. In Lawrence v. Kansas, the Supreme Court legalized simply having gay relationships, sexual relationships. Obergefell, the Supreme Court legalized gay marriage. Now, the one thing that Thomas didn't point out was Loving versus Virginia, which legalized interracial marriage, maybe because that would gore his particular ox. But now we've got this situation where all across America, law school professors are freaking out because they can't teach constitutional law anymore because the Supreme Court is no longer following the Constitution. They're instead following the dictates of a political party and of Donald Trump. You've got this Tiffany Jeffers, a professor at Georgetown University. She said, it's hard to think about your own profession, the things you were taught, the things you believed in abruptly coming to an end. It's hard to ask a law professor to dismantle all the training they've had. It's difficult, emotional, psychological transformation. It's not easy to upend your life's work and no longer trust the Supreme Court. Another professor at Duke Law School, same thing. I've always perceived the court as a tool for justice. It's honestly hard to know what to say to students entering this profession right now. So what's it going to take before the court gets over?
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I personally think that this fall we're going to see, and next spring, we're going to see the court gutting civil rights and voting rights, and that might be enough to cause Congress to say, okay, 13 people now,